Tomato Lake. It's an odd name for the 7 hectares of wetland that is now known as Tomato Lake. Back in the 1890s, it was a peat swamp called Smith's Lake, and in the early 1900s, it was called Craig's Swamp. Described as a low-lying pond, it was surrounded by dense bushland filled with marri trees, banksias, orchids, and many varieties of flowers, spanning 30 acres of land. Stephen Craig was a local poultry farmer and a member of the Belmont Roads Board from 1899 to 1905, and again in 1910 to 1911. But he will probably be best remembered for giving Tomato Lake its distinctive name. He wanted to use the area to grow maize, and often grew vegetables during the dry summer months. In 1913, he decided to use tomatoes as feed for the poultry and sent some of his employees to camp at the swamp and plant the new crop. The tomatoes were so impressive that Craig sold most to local residents, a sauce factory, and at market, with only some going to his chickens. People remembered that the tomatoes they grew were gorgeous, too big to fit in your hand. Although they were only grown for a few seasons, the memory of the tomatoes lingered. Much of the surrounding bushland was cut down for firewood, causing greater flooding of the swamp. In 1955, 30,000 trout were released into the lake by the Trout Anglers Club. The Roads Board assisted in clearing and establishing a reserve, which was officially acquired in 1969. By the 1960s, all the peat had been removed and the lake began to be used as a compensating basin for the South Belmont main drain. Tomato Lake had been subjected to many decades of ecological tampering. Perhaps it was only natural that this would lead to an environmental disaster that would lead the whole community to fight together to save their beloved wetlands. Tragedies and triumphs at Tomato Lake. In the 1940s, Tomato Lake was a popular place for local children to paddle homemade canoes and catch gilgies. The South Belmont State School, now known as Cudale Primary School, took children on nature study excursions, and in 1945, Headmaster Miller set up a branch of the Gould-Berg League and a bird table at Tomato Lake. Water safety is as important today as it was back then, but tragedies do occur. In 1946, a teenage girl drowned in an accident at Tomato Lake. She was playing after school in a makeshift canoe. It was the eve of her 14th birthday. Environmental disasters have also impacted this area. In the 1970s, an infestation of the slimy aquatic weed Salvinia spread across the surface of Tomato Lake, choking the water and plants and killing birds in large numbers. A huge clean-up was organised by local action groups and the Shire. The community began to realise how important the lake was to them. Redevelopment of the area began in 1971 as a result of a campaign by locals. Don Tyler, a pharmacist from Belgravia Street, stood for local government on the issue and won. The lake was officially named Tomato Lake and made into a reserve in 1974. In 1998, the lake was deepened to maintain water levels in the summer months. Aerators have been installed in the lake to improve oxygen levels, and a bacterial enzyme is added as a preventative measure to reduce nutrient availability. A revegetation program along the lake bank provides a habitat for fauna while improving water quality to help prevent algal blooms and Salvinia outbreaks from ever happening again. Today, Tomato Lake continues to support a wide variety of bird life and other fauna including long-necked tortoises and frogs. In 2011, the interpretive bushland known as Jida Bidi, the Noongar word for small bird path, was created near the Scenic Drive car park, with revegetation and installation of walk trails and interpretive signage. These ongoing measures will allow future visitors to continue exploring and enjoying this beautiful local area.
I started working for Stephen Craig in the month of October 1910 on the poultry farm. Craig was a shrewd man, gave nothing away. He belonged to the north of Ireland. By the end of 1910, green feed for the poultry was getting scarce, so me and Craig and Harry Jeffries went down to the swamp in the horse and cart to fix up the fences and sow some maize. The swamp was nearly dry, and Craig told me it had been flooded for 7 years, and this was the first year he had planted it. Craig used to send 3 or 4 men down from the farm a few hours every day to help the picking, for Craig only paid 2 visits to the swamp. We only picked from between 5,000 and 6,000 cases for the market. Waterman told me they cleared 1,200 pounds after expenses. We sent 2 cases of tomatoes to the sauce factory at £5 a tonne, but no more, as Craig said it did not pay. So every day, 1 tonne to 30 cases went to the poultry farm, as Craig had 15,000 hens to feed, and the men told me the birds were mad on them. It was the cutting the trees for firewood for Perth that flooded the swamp. It was dust dry in 1914 and 1916, as I should know, as I camped on it.
Well, there we go. That's a little bit about Tomato Lake. Why it's called Tomato Lake and what happened here. Today it's a beautiful recreational walk and bird life sanctuary.